Ready to talk about innovation that's changing the world and meet the people that are making it happen? Welcome to the Global Code podcast.
Here, we go beyond the buzzwords, beyond the headlines to uncover the real stories behind technology's global impact.
From AI to clean tech, blockchain to biotech, we are exploring innovations that matter and talking to pioneers driving change in every corner of the world with a focus on people, purpose, and possibility.
Wondering how AI and emerging technologies will shape your future?
Yeah, we're wondering that too.
So we are asking the boldest thinkers and builders we can find.
Come with us on this journey into the heart of innovation across borders and boundaries.
This is Global Code.
Tech for everyone, everywhere.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Global Code podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Salima Bhimani.
I'm Dr. Shadan Deleveaux.
I'm Ashish Pujari.
And today we have with us Dr. St. Patrick Reid. Dr. Reid is a globally recognized expert in emerging viruses, including Ebola, Marburg, and SARS-CoV-2. He earned his PhD from Mount Sinai, where he made a groundbreaking discovery identifying the function of the Ebola virus BP24 protein. Dr. Reid has conducted cutting-edge research at institutions like the Pasteur Institute and the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases. He is currently an associate professor at the University of Nebraska Medical Center, where his lab explores host pathogen interactions to develop innovative therapeutics. During the COVID-19 pandemic, he co-led international efforts to design novel treatments and co-authored educational tools for children. A recipient of multiple investigator awards, Dr. Reid has published over 50 scientific articles and holds 2 patents. He is especially passionate about leveraging AI and emerging technologies to address global health inequities. Welcome, Dr. Reid.
Thank you for having me.
We're excited to have you here and just so many questions to ask you. So let's just jump in.
Yep.
So you've really been at the forefront of research on some of the world's most dangerous viruses. Like I said, Ebola, Marburg, and most recently, SARS-CoV-2. What originally drew you to this line of work?
Right. So I've always been interested in looking at emerging infectious diseases. So for my first year in graduate school, I was drawn to one particular professor, Christopher Basler, who was working on looking at how Ebola virus can block the innate immune system. So I joined his lab, and I was actually his very first student. And so that kind of got me started in that field. And so how it works is because we were at Mount Sinai, we were not able to work with the virus because there's only a select group of labs that has what's called the biosafety level 4 facility, which has the safety procedures in place to handle live Ebola virus. So because we were basically working on components of the virus, that drew me more into wanting to work in areas and institutions that had the live virus. And so that's what I did for my postdoctoral fellowship. And so I just got really interested there. And then from working on Ebola, naturally, if you're in that setting, other BSL-4 like pathogens just come to you because they just happen to be around and available. So then you kind of work, and so you move into that direction. And then, in terms of the pandemic, that wasn't really a choice. That was more of all hands on deck situation where when it occurred, if you were a virologist, you had to work. There was no choice.
Okay. So at some point in school, you decided to major in microbiology and cell immunology, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes. At undergrad at the University of Rochester, while others were majoring in things like philosophy, I chose to focus on molecular biology and more looking at microbes and infectious disease. And so I've always had a passion for working on infectious disease. I told my mother when I was in the 3rd grade I was going to cure HIV. Didn't do it, but I always had a passion for that from a very young age. And I cannot pinpoint why. I'd probably need a hypnotherapist or something to tell me. But I don't know. It was just there.
And then how has that love or that passion for it just evolved over time?
Oh, that's easy. It's the more you learn about it, the more fascinating it is. The world, the microbial world it's like it's more interesting than the real world, than the human world, because there's so many things that are happening, and the designs of it allows us to understand the way I would say the macro world works, and we're constantly learning about it. I mean, we're learning about new cells in the body. We're discovering new microbes, or discovering the functions of new microbes like every other day. So there's always something new to study. There's always something new to keep your head above water to try to figure out. There's always something that's needed to try to help. Um, the foundation of it all is the goal to try to help people and help people who are suffering. So with chikungunya virus that I work on, for example, chikungunya, which there's currently a huge outbreak in China right now, over 10,000 cases of it. And so with chikungunya virus, you can get either acute joint pain or a chronic joint pain. And I formerly did a study in Colombia, a longitudinal study, where we're able to show that you can develop this chronic joint pain for over 3 years. And it's really debilitating joint pain, and there's really no therapeutics for it. But just to familiarize the audience, chikungunya, the word chikungunya means that which bends, from the Makonde tribe in Tanzania, where it was first reported in the Western literature in about 1952. So because it was called that which bends, you can imagine the pain that you're in when you get it. And it's really difficult to parse whether you're going to get the acute version of it, meaning it goes away in a week or two, or the chronic version that will stay with you for years. And it's just extremely bad joint pain. And so I'm passionate about doing that because my mother has really bad arthritis, and combining the mechanisms by which these viruses can induce the arthritic response, and aligning that with rheumatoid arthritis or osteoarthritis is a goal of mine, because you can utilize knowledge of pathogenicity of a virus to understand the ailments that affect us.
I appreciate that, and I feel like this sounds like we're kind of getting to the heart of what it is. It's this deep desire to really help and uncover things to help people in a very personal way from your mother, but it sounds like even more broadly as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So wait, so Dr. Reid, like you're not scared about being in the world? I just feel like you're probably seeing things that the rest of us are not seeing. Probably don't even want to see, to be honest with you. And you have an insight into what's happening under the hood in some ways. Like,
Yeah. But I mean, I grew up in Brooklyn. I was more afraid of going to school and sometimes than working with Ebola virus. I mean, it's in a dish and it's right over there. It's not shooting at me, right? So I'm cool. I just have to have the right precautions, and it's fine. But seriously, once you have training and you are around, world experts, and you listen very carefully, and your training, you just trust that, that's with anything you do. If you really want to get good at it, you really listen.
So, I mean, I think this is incredible, this idea of like sort of listening. I feel like you're listening to what the pathogens are telling you. You're listening to the microbial world,
yes.
as you're also listening to our interaction with it, right? Ours meaning like the experts, but also the world. And what I'm curious about is like when you think about like the last, many decades that you've been in this world and that your colleagues have been in this world, how have things really evolved in terms of understanding an approach to addressing these diseases?
So one is scientific, the other is more societal, I believe. So the latter is, I think, the ability of other people to get in the room. So the diversity of the scientific force, I believe. So the ability of institutions of higher learning to have a more diversified virology quirks, I'd say.
Mm.
So that's one thing that helps to allow for that. And I forgot the first part of the question again.
It was just more in terms of how have you seen the kind of the approach to addressing
Oh,
virology and sort of these global diseases changed
right.
over time given your history?
Right. So the other part of it too is within the scientific space. A lot of the advancements that are made behind the scenes is usually through really great collaborations. And so when um, immunologists get in the room, for example, with a virologist, you start seeing these movements. And when you have your virologists who are strictly in the BSL-4 space, start collaborating with scientists who, let's say, work on Ebola, but work on Ebola and aware that they can't have the whole virus. When that
Mhm.
collaboration starts, then there's more of a diversity of the techniques that can be brought to bear to understand
Mhm.
the virus better, and also the ability to have international collaborations
Mhm.
to be able to go to labs in different parts of Africa, different parts of Europe, different parts of India, or wherever. That helps to foster a lot of movement as well, because and that really gets kicked off more by conferences. When you're able to go to these international conferences, that helps to to open your eyes to what else, other things that are going on, and so those are really great things
Sure.
that help to answer your question.
Yeah. What I'm hearing you say is that there's a cross-disciplinary element to, like, getting better at addressing these diseases. The more minds you have, the more perspectives you have, potentially, that gives us different angles on how to address,
Right.
whether it's Ebola or COVID or whatever it might be.
Right. And that's also why, tying it into this podcast, the emergence of AI in the scientific space is another way that it potentially will, can, and should go even more sped up to have greater advancements. And I think, unfortunately, um, the scientific space has been really behind in catching up to the true potential that AI can be utilized for within that space. I believe the clinical area is is is, is doing some really great things
Yeah.
with regards to the utilization of AI and clinical development for treating patients.
Yeah.
I believe the research space is slowly getting there too, but there really needs to be a jump to really harness the power, because the beautiful thing about the research space, in my mind, is there is a wealth of data that have been accumulated over time with regards to all kinds of knowledge. So within my virology space, there's a lot of data with regards to the viral proteins, the viral interactions, the conditions it can cause, the outbreaks, how things are impacted, the different models that have been used, coalescing all that information into the right
Yeah.
tool
Right.
can be super productive in finding
Yeah.
treatments in my mind. And that
Yeah.
really has been lagging behind the true potential of doing that.
Mm.
Like,
And I love what you're saying because it's almost like the thing that AI is really good at is the thing that y'all need, right? Like,
exactly.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The pattern matching, the ability to, harness large sets of data, to be able to go sort of deep and wide with that data, to do analysis in ways potentially that would take you, decades to get to.
Yeah. I mean, thinking about it like this, there are a lot of scientists who, I mean, in the past, they spend their entire career working on a single protein.
Mhm.
Think about that.
Mhm.
Like, people spend their whole life working on a virus, not just a virus, a
Yes,
protein. And then they're like, good job. Fantastic. And,
right.
and like, that was good. And that was great, because that was a capacity. But
Yes.
it's inexcusable now to do that when there is greater capacity.
Mm.
Yeah, I would. Thanks, Dr. Reid, for that. So there is one aspect that you mentioned is, there is a lot of data out there. It's a matter of putting maybe everything together or querying it. How about the aspect of using AI as an assistant, right? Like, because, uh, you know, you can feed everything and kind of have AI draw the conclusions, maybe, right?
Mhm.
Or you can use it such that, hey, I wonder how X professor or X doctor would think about it, like my theory. And instead of talking to that person, I don't know, maybe that person lives far away or is no more for whatever reason, right? Uh, what about the idea of you feeding all of the research and then asking that AI questions, and maybe the AI is able to answer to some extent on of how that person would respond to your questions?
Yeah, that's a really powerful tool. Um, the good thing is that would be great for learning new information. The bad thing is you might want to reduce your workforce, right? You may not need as many professors in the department. If you could do that very efficiently, you could trim the fat, so to speak, which, I don't mind at all doing that.
No,
But
it's not about reducing workforce. What I'm thinking is like, oh, let's say you have 20 people or so, right? And you'll be like, oh, I wish I could have gotten this additional perspective. But now you can, right? Now you can.
right.
So instead of reducing, you are essentially adding more people at less cost or no cost.
So, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but what you're getting at is a deeper collaborative mechanism. Um, that would be amazing because that would foster, if you can, a more interdisciplinary way to utilize it. Because for now, when you have a collaborator, you kind of do that already within the scientific space. But and when you're writing a grant, for example, and you're bringing in a medicinal chemist, you do have that back and forth engagement pretty heavily, especially right when you're in the period of submitting the grant. Afterwards, though, maybe not so much until data is being generated. Um, but you mentioned something earlier, which is kind of the lab assistant part. I think that would be an interesting tool to use. I believe there are some software out there already for general kind of lab assist in terms of like handling inventory and lab workbooks and keeping up with experimental data and output, but expanding it to like a relationship with a separate colleague or different groups of colleagues, that can be a more I would say steady meeting space for it. So not just for a grant, for example, or not just for like write, writing a manuscript, but to have a long standing, like a lab meeting, like how we have a lab meeting every week. To have something established like that through collaborators would be a great idea.
And then you have been in the space, I guess Salima asked you the question, what has changed, I guess, over time. It'd be great to know, like, in terms of technology also, what has changed over time, and would be great to have your perspective of where it should go for
Yeah,
the betterment of the field.
yeah. So the ability to harness what we call more high throughput data. So to be able to have more understanding of proteins in a bigger pot. So you're looking at, hundreds of thousands of proteins at a time now, as opposed to when I started my PhD and you're just looking at a small number. The ability to look at inhibitors in a broader way through having like a plate that has 96 wells in it, so you can put 10,000 cells per 96 well, and then now you can go even higher than that, 384 and 1284 and all these different um, higher numbers of cell numbers and compounds. And the other thing is there's really been a really great collaborative effort to have small molecules or compounds be made available. And I know the NIH does a really good job, and there are other institutions that do a really good job at making these compounds or small molecules freely available for use. And so there's a lot of these repositories in place. And there are a lot of institutions that are doing really good jobs at setting up repositories for things like uh, the University of Texas Medical Branch, for example, has a virology repository. So if you're a virologist and you're interested in getting a virus for your work, you can just reach out, and that's available. There are all these mechanisms in place. Adgene is a company where if the four of us are working together, we develop what's called a plasmid, which can make a gene. We develop that. We can submit it to Adgene, and Adgene will make it available for the scientific community at large to have, to use. So those kinds of advancements, I think, is really helping to foster the growth of science. The ability for researchers to say and have a repository to say, "Hey, I developed this." Then they give it to this repository space. This repository space says, "Hey, yeah, now look, the global code has created this. Everyone can use it." So those things are very new.
So thank you for sharing that. It sounds like there are a lot of developments that are happening in the, excuse me, across the scientific community a bit more broadly. I'm curious about just how you have been using AI, specifically in your research or in your lab, or what you've seen specifically just from an AI standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I bought what's called a high content imager tool some years ago when I was starting my lab and the faculty position. And what it does is it's specifically a machine learning tool. So I've used that a lot for identifying compounds of interest that can affect certain viruses, where I would do the infection treatment, and then utilize the tool to do basically pattern recognition to identify infected cells, uninfected cells, and see if the cells themselves are impacted by the compound separately from the virus, or vice versa. So I've been using, I would say, I don't know if you would call it low level for you guys, but like machine learning based pattern recognition tools to look at disease for probably since 2016, but it's been around for way before that. Your more advanced versions, I have not gotten into that personally, but I am writing proposals and we are getting into that space now. So, I mean, I'm not being a hypocrite myself. I'm also behind in that space, and I'm trying to catch up as well. When I say that research is behind AI space.
No, listen, I think the interesting thing about the space is that it moves so fast and it's hard for anyone to stay in front of it. I think everyone is really just doing their best.
Yes.
One, to understand, and then two, just trying to keep up.
Yes. So for me, the way that I help myself with that is I taught an AI class last semester. So for my virology course, I put in an AI lecture. Why? To force me to deep dive into it, to then be able to teach the class. So that's kind of how I kind of jump started myself into it, by forcing myself to have to immerse myself in it more.
Adam Grant has this book, and I wish I could remember the name of it. But he talks about like the key to basically success is forcing yourself to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? Being in that position of always learning, not necessarily being a master of the domain, but forcing yourself to be okay with being uncomfortable in it as you're pressing forward. I feel very much that way, actually co-founding this podcast with Salima and Ashish, who are two experts. But so yes,
Well,
You're
she should be the
very
real expert.
uncomfortable.
She should be the real expert.
Expert in what is the question, right?
So just taking a step back for 1 second, one of the things that I mentioned briefly when I introduced you in your bio was the Ebola virus and the VP24 protein. And, I just want to just kind of pull back for a minute and focus on that for a moment, because, you read it in the bio, but for our listeners in the audience who just know of Ebola just as a virus, but nothing about the intricacies of it, can you help people understand exactly what the VP24 protein is and your connection to it?
Okay. I should be able to do this. So, your cells make, thousands of genes. Ebola virus comes in and it makes 7, right? And so those 7 genes will play an integral role in the ability of the virus to do everything it needs to do to enter the cells, to replicate in the cells, to multiply, to then package itself back up and to leave. And because the let's say the package that it brings in is so small, each of those genes have a very specific and precise function. And moreover, they can have dual multi-functionality, as you can imagine, because they have to probably play a lot of different roles because they're coming into the cells. The cells are like, oh, what's going on? So they got to have some guys. The genes have to be there to play some deep defense, as well as to help the virus itself do some things. So when the virus infects, the same sets of genes that are involved in making sure it's replicating fine have to do double duty and prevent the cell's ability to stop it from replicating. And so what that is called the innate immune response. So when the virus is inside the cell has mechanisms in place to A, recognize the virus is there, and B, to mount a response against it to prevent its ability to replicate. So what we identified is that when Ebola gets into the cell, one of the genes it makes is called VP24. Now, VP24 plays a role within the virus in terms of building its structure and all that stuff, what have you. But what we identified is that when the cells are initially triggered by the presence of the virus, there's what's called the interferon response that gets turned on. And the interferon response is in place to basically initiate a programming that will stop the virus. And what happens is proteins will move from, let's say, the surface of the cells into the nucleus of the cell to upregulate or turn on genes. In order to move from the cytoplasm of the cell into the nucleus of the cell, there are proteins in place that are required and help to shuttle them in. And these are called your importers or carrier proteins, meaning that if Shadan is destined to go from the cytoplasm to the nucleus to upregulate a gene, Shadan cannot just walk right in. It has to hold hands with somebody else. And that person that it's holding hands with mediate its ability to move into the nucleus to then do its job. What we found is that VP24 will actually engage that shuttling factor. And by doing that, it prevents the ability of you to go into the nucleus. So basically, VP24 inhibits the ability of one of the proteins required to upregulate the gene response, the antiviral response, therefore allowing for the virus to replicate more efficiently. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I think it does. So, but Salima, Ashish?
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
I wasn't sure whether you were going somewhere with it, Shadan. I felt like you were going somewhere with it.
Blank stares, so you got to help me out. I don't know if it's a good blank stare or a bad blank stare.
Well, no. The where I was going with this is, so there are 7 genes in the Ebola. Was that number correct? Was it 7?
Yeah. Yes.
And so the scientific community understood what 6 of the genes did, and
For the
then
most part.
your research uncovered what the 7th gene did.
I mean, yeah, but I just it's you don't want to like make it too big of a deal, because it's because honestly, really, the virus was doing it before, and VP24 was doing it before, so it's like getting credit for something that was already happening. You just kind of saw it. So I think you can't get too big on yourself for like pulling the curtain back and seeing what was already going on. Like, I didn't make it. I didn't do anything to it. The virus is always there doing it. I just started to learn how to appreciate it. And then I think once you appreciate it, you respect it. And once you respect it enough, you learn about it. But for the most part, it's doing it long before me, long after me. And it was always doing it, right? And
isn't that what discovery means though? Like something was there and then you found it? Isn't that?
But I didn't find it. I didn't find it. I just saw it.
Right.
Well, you saw it. Not everybody else saw it. You got to own that part of it, my friend.
But ideally, I mean, I'd like to think optimistically someone else would have at some point, right? I just I just feel like my new kind of take on all of this is that we need to move a lot faster in infectious disease research. We need to get better. And
Hmm.
I think one way to get better is to get off the tower, so to speak. Like
Right.
understanding the way the virus works. It's a good thing to do that. It's a good thing to know that. And it's good to know what ZP24 did. And I'm proud that I was able to contribute something to the body, right? The body of science. But for me, it's like there's so much more to do, you know? It's like it's like I I found the piece of this puzzle. Puzzle is like huge. You know? So I want to
I mean,
find more pieces, and then you can tell me what's up. You know,
spoken like
let
a
me
true
fix the whole
scientist, but
quarter.
it's never enough because the world is big. But hey, listen, I have a question for you because I mean, I find it really fascinating the way that you talk about a virus. You know, it's an entity, it has a architecture, it almost has a personality, it's sort of working its way. And I really appreciated what you said about respecting it, like hearing it, listening to it, seeing it, respecting it, allowing it to teach you, you know, about itself. I mean, that's how I was interpreting what you were saying.
Mhm,
But what I'm curious about is like when you come at it from that perspective, and I don't know if that's true of all of your colleagues, if they're like you, in terms of how you approach it. But with AI, what I find really interesting is like when you bring in AI into it, now you're bringing in another thing into it that's not the human mind, right?
mhm.
Whether it's a co-pilot or something else. And what I'm curious about is that, like, are people worried about that in your world? Like, are they feeling uncomfortable with that idea of bringing in some kind of technological sort of co-pilot to help move things forward? Or do you feel like there's a level of excitement that now we can move faster?
Um, yeah, I think that's an interesting question, and it depends on where you go. I believe there's a generational change with regards to that. So I mean, I think naturally, like societally with anything, I believe you're more, um, I'd say, seasoned researchers are less inclined to adopt the potential, whereas I
Yes.
believe your newer researchers coming into the fold are more inclined to. Um, Broadly speaking, I believe this is the case. The side note thing is students are coming into the lab who have a better grasp than the professors. So that's
Mm,
also an interesting dynamic to work through.
mhm, mhm.
Um, but broadly, I would say, um, I would assume that your more newer faculty are being or pushing it forward a lot more effectively. I don't
Mhm.
have a lot of evidence because um, post COVID, I think we're just starting to get back on track with having, in person meetings
Yeah.
and conferences and those kinds of things.
Mhm.
So getting a real assessment of the field, like even so, there was a virology meeting recently that I didn't make it to, and we're really just starting to get back to having these big conference meetings, and that would be the place to be to get a better feel for the ability to more efficiently answer that question.
I love how the virologists are like, "No, we're gonna wait till mid-2025 to get together," while the rest of the world's like, "Sure, I'm going to the club. See ya."
Yeah, yeah, that was a thing, and I was surprised there was even a meeting. Which,
That's
and,
fascinating.
and honestly, I don't want to, I wasn't
Yeah.
going.
Um, so then on that point about kind of where things are at, I mean, we are seeing from some of the data that, you know, people who use ChatGPT, for example, you know, their brains are kind of developing very differently than people who are not using ChatGPT in terms of research and sort of using it as a tool. And so what I'm curious about too is like as your field develops and they sort of integrate AI, like do you think that there's going to have to be this facilitation around how to really use it because you've had to use only your brain and in collaboration with the brain of others to get to this point, right? Whereas
Mhm.
other folks might be like, yeah, I'm just going to ask ChatGPT, what we do with this protein. I don't have to figure it out myself, which
Um,
is which can be a drawback.
yeah. That makes me laugh because I've used the tool now um, upon the recommendation of a friend. So I started using it quite a bit. And when I tell my colleagues about it, they're like either like afraid of it or they think it's cheating. Or
Right.
it's a weird thing, but you're right. There is this idea, and I can't say that I can't say that I don't have it either. There's this desire to be like, I need to figure this out because that's how I've always done it. I need to read some papers and create
Mhm.
this concept. And now you're telling me this thing can read the papers for me. Well, that's cool, but I still need to do that. And adopting the mentality, which I I won't lie, I'm in the stages of adopting it. I'm not fully there, but I know where I should be. But
Mhm.
the transition of it, it's a bit scary because what it really is pushing you to do is what Dr. Deleveaux said earlier, which is becoming uncomfortable again. Right. So it's the ability now to say, well, man, you just kind of wrote a grant for me. What do I do with that now? Like there's going to be the
Mhm.
next evolutionary step
Mhm.
of how do you define and determine the experiments and the way you put together your science when the part that you thought was the most difficult part, honestly,
Mhm.
is it's like it's done. So it's kind of scary. And so one part of it is, do you need me anymore? But that's the naive, Luddite kind of form of it. The real form of it should be now you can take science to another level,
Yes.
you know.
Yes. Exactly.
And I will be completely honest. This is the part that I'm in. I'm in that phase where it's scary and exciting because, like you said before, like jumping into deep waters and all these different things and immersing yourself in something new. I find it fascinating. I don't know if others will share that sentiment because I do find it fascinating that I can literally put together data and put together like grant ideas and these things using this tool because now I'm sitting there thinking, what else can I do?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
think that's really exciting and scary though
Yeah.
if you don't know what else to do.
And to your point, I think this is where like this is going to require some facilitation. I think there's people like you that are going to be able to do that pivot and say, okay, now what else is possible? I think other people are going to they're going to need help in figuring out what else is possible. I just don't think that this is going to be a solve that people are going to do on an individual basis. I think institutions are going to have to realize that we need to help people through this transition, right?
Right.
To see where they can now contribute to your point. Like maybe it opens up entire other worlds that you weren't able to focus on because you were so focused on writing grants.
Exactly. And to your point, this is where I feel like it would be really important to have these kinds of like foundational sections within departments or within institutions. Like perhaps we need to have um, institutions adopt a more holistic, true interdisciplinary space, which would incorporate AI, but in such a way that it's just a normal function of that space that it's in. So so like when a faculty member comes in or something like that, when you have retreats, when you have meetings, when you have a virology meeting, when you have your microbiology meeting, that has to be a foundational portion of that meeting. That has to be accepted as the normality in the scientific space now.
Yeah. And Dr. Reed, like I'm just going back to what you said before, and thank you for being humble enough to say, okay, I just saw what the virus is doing and I'm not doing those things. And I just saw it and kind of pulled the curtains. Um, and the fact that you mentioned that, there are some folks maybe sitting in ivory towers and protecting or kind of hoarding the information. And actually, one of the guests on this podcast, the first episode of this podcast, did mention that to us. I think one of their concerns was that a lot of people are hoarding information, and maybe AI is the thing, and it's gonna somewhat distribute that power over, right? Like across different fields, and maybe also free up time for somebody like you, right? Like where you're like, okay, if I'm spending so much time writing grants, but you're really interested in figuring out like how a particular virus behaves, or maybe there are 50 different proteins that you want to look at. It really
Mhm.
helps you out in that sense. So
Mhm.
I guess point being, if I am a person, I guess, looking to start a company in this space, and given that you have so much experience, where would you want me to start? Like, should I be looking at, like, which aspect should I be looking at? Should I be looking at the education space and trying
Mhm.
to get to using AI to educate more people so that they are not just asking Chat GPT and not learning anything? Or should I be looking more into helping researchers like you? Like, where should I be focusing, or is it all of it?
Yeah. Um, I think with that very particular interest, the focus should be on research education. So I would focus that on your emerging scientists in that space, and on the emerging scientists, and the emerging role of, let's say, funding institutions and what they play in that, because all of it is connected. And typically when you are trying to, get your lab off the ground, and you're trying to work on new discoveries, and making these big, impactful research occur, you really need to lean on the ability to get funding, to like acquire resources. And that stops at the institutions that are supposed to be giving it to you. And they are not capable of fully grasping the technology that you're using and the tools that are available, then it's cut off right there. So you can harness new technologies, and you can train, you can do scientific education towards what to use. But if you inform me about, better ways to go about doing my research, I then submit something, and it's being evaluated by someone who has no idea what we're talking about, doesn't get funded. And so the pipeline is cut there. So I would say, um, the scientific education, but it must have multiple arms to it, and it should be established in a way that helps the funding bodies just as much as it helps the actual research bodies as well, because they must move in unison. Because effectively, you need the funding bodies to have an understanding of what the research body is doing, and that was an issue for me. I can say that personally, that I've submitted grants that I don't think it was accepted because it was too multidisciplinary, and had topics in it that, let's say, individuals reviewing it may not be familiar with. So I think a great angle would be to have a company that's designed to do a more holistic or a comprehensive science education with regards to different arms in the research space. Uh, Now, for like, selfishly for me, as someone who's working in the research field, if I were to be a part of the company, what I would want to do is specifically address particular disease conditions, and utilize the skill set to address those things, and break down emerging fields that can be used to harness things that we don't look at. So the world of RNA biology is extremely new in understanding how these RNA molecules can work, and developing tools to use them to treat infectious disease would be something that AI can be it's integrated with these new tools like AlphaFold and NewFold and these different things. Um, so that's the place I would go with regards to the science part. With regards to the education part, I would say that it has to have an arm that not only trains the researchers, but trains the organizations in place to help researchers.
So on that point, I wanted to kind of build off of there and just I know that you are very interested in this, even though you talked about being more nascent in the AI space. I know that you're very interested in this intersection of technology, and your area of work and sort of how we can propel really this field through it. And what I'm really curious about is, because it's coming from tech, I think, and having worked with a lot of biotech, health tech companies, I think one of the things that I've seen is there seems to be at least, I mean, maybe this is closing the gap a little. There's a closing of the gap a little bit, but there seems to still be sort of a separation between kind of the tech world or health tech or biotech and the academic world. And sometimes there's convergence, and of course, they feed off of each other, but they really are operating in a very different way. We know that like tech companies are well funded, many of them, not all of them, but many of them are well funded. They have access to funding in a way that educational institutions don't. And we also know that, that whole sort of funding structure is shifting as well. So it just seems to me that this convergence between tech and academia or researchers like yourself is so fundamental because you have the kind of knowledge that most technologists won't have. Of course, they bring in people with expertise in your area, but I just feel like there's a deeper sort of quest, for me at least, of figuring out like how do we really bring people like yourself, like deep, deep, deep experts and technology together in a way that's really going to help us move forward rather than continuing to live in this sort of bifurcated worlds that sometimes meet, but most likely don't meet, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I do think that for myself personally, I would like to play a role in mediating that response because I'm I'm seeing the true potential of this tool.
Yes.
And and I believe that it's getting to the place where, the academia is going to need to catch up to it because
Mhm.
the problem is that if you incorporate the movement within the tech space with the current climate, there's going to be a brain drain in research. Like legitimately, if you truly think about it, with not to make it too serious, but with 40% cut in the NIH budget, you're thinking about let's say you had a 5% chance of getting a grant. Imagine what that percentage is now, and imagine if you're becoming a young professor, why would you even want to go down that road? Um, so, so over time, this is going to change. Now, when it comes to just the intersection of, meeting with the, in the biotech space and mixing that information, I believe that I want to become a leader in that, trying to make that transition and make that transition known in such a way that it can encourage researchers in the academic space to want to collaborate and or to want to be involved more in that space. And I think I can
Okay.
I can see the benefit now in such a way that I didn't see before, to be completely
Yeah.
honest. Um, and that's because of that's because of some, ritualistic kind of academia is the truth,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, for
then
sure.
there's corruption outside of it, and you people are
Yeah.
dirty and I'm clean, and, and that was always that's like that's like the mystifying thing. There's some kind of aura to it, when you're a grad student, like when you're doing your
Sure.
PhD, you look at your professors and you look at them as like they didn't sell out, like they are
Yeah.
wearing the same old dirty sweaters. They are, and with their holy pants, they're all scruffy looking, and that's like there's a mystique to that. There's a mystique to not, you know, jumping ship, so to speak. But I believe for me, the more mature you get and the deeper you delve into the field and to the point of, peeling back the curtain on these different diseases or understanding pathogens, I'm now at the stage where like you need to make that step. It's it should be a natural step for an academic to make, to embrace this movement and to embrace this transition into this space and actually to forge a better relationship with the academic space. Um,
Yeah.
Especially when you truly have a deep desire to fix something. I think it's imperative that you have to do that.
Mhm.
It's myopic, I believe, to really think you can try to treat an infectious disease and turn a blind eye to the tech space.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I
And
know that we're almost at oh, please go
disingenuous
ahead.
as well. No, and disingenuous as well, because you're not going to fix anything by using, you know, I don't know, a typewriter when there's a computer available.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think also that we're at the point as a society, and I would love your thoughts on these closing thoughts on this part of it, is that as a society, there's I don't know if it was more complicated. It's more complicated now than it was 20 or 30 or 40 years ago from a health perspective. It feels like that. That may not be necessarily true from your perspective, but feels like that. And it just seems to me that we need to move not just faster, but better in terms of how we've
Yeah,
been trying to solve these problems.
right. And I 100% agree. And I think the funny part is we move faster, but it's like, if you truly want to be effective, you should be moving slower in a sense. And what I mean
Yes.
by that is it's an analogy I've been saying recently, where it's like we are playing this game of Jenga, where the bottom pieces are kind of, there's pieces that are gone already in the bottom. We know they're gone already. All we're doing is just playing and building and building and building. It falls down.
Mhm.
We go again to another game, but that other game still has bottom pieces missing. And what AI can do and what the tech space can do is actually, let's just start from all the pieces being on the floor and build it together first, and then start playing the game. Because we are approaching it knowing there are all these different gaps in knowledge, and these gaps in knowledge relate to, I was on a flight recently and met a woman who was telling me about her endometriosis and all the pain she's in. And doctors do not have a measure for dealing with pain when it comes to women. Like, the pain response in
Yeah.
women is extremely different, and there isn't a complete understanding. There isn't a complete way that the medical field has been able to really bridge the gap to training.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
there are these things that they're missing pieces, and we just keep playing the game as if
Yeah.
there's not a tool available that has access to information enough to close these gaps in knowledge, as if there aren't large enough studies that need to be pieced together properly. And the real power of AI is the data from certain spaces may not be from where you think they should be, that might still provide the information that you need. And so
Mhm.
that would be what we need to do. And so when they move faster, they're moving faster, but they're not moving more efficiently, because they're moving in a way where there's still pieces that are missing, but they're pretending as if they don't exist.
Yeah, definitely. Which is
And then
why
what
it's
happens
not
when they crumble again?
only
When they
AI.
crumble, then we start again as if we don't know why it crumbled in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, which is why it's not just AI or not just humans. I think we're at the point where we really have to think about what that collaboration or that co-piloting is.
Yes.
Um, Thank you so much for coming on. I mean, this was fascinating. I think we could all go on for like another hour at least.
Yeah, because that's really interesting, that what you were just saying, because I do have a really lot to say about not just women, information and data, but also diversity of data, and the different kinds of people that have been utilized for the development of different treatments. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
that does not help really precision drug design.
No, it
So
doesn't.
that's a
And if you're
whole other
using data,
topic.
but if you are using data on existing data, then that's hence the problem that you're talking about, the Jenga problem, right?
Oh no, but
Building
you
on
can
top
find
of
different
gaps.
pieces from alternate sources.
Yeah, but it may not be okay. We're not getting into you and I are not getting into this fight right now. We're not doing this. I see what you were doing, sir. I saw that.
Signing
For
off,
hour
starting
two
another
of the
3 hour
program.
conversation.
For hour two, hour two, hour two.
But thank you so much for coming on. We again learned a ton. We're super excited about having you on again. Obviously, there's a part
Thank
two
you.
to this at some point. Shadan, Ashish, you want to close off in any way?
I just want to say thank you so much for being out there, and one, So Salima mentioned it, but the way that you talk about science is, I found to be incredibly unique, and you make it accessible in a way that a lot of people don't. So thank you for not just your contributions, but your perspective and the way you use your platform to make it more accessible to other people.
Yeah.
Thank. I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
I would, I would add on to that and say, usually, as you said, when we ask academics, some people will make you feel like you don't know what you're talking about, and which is fine, right? Like, but you are pretty approachable and knowledgeable, which is a difficult combo to find.
Thank.
So in other words, Dr. Reed, we love you. Please come back.
Love you back.
Uh,
Yes.
All right, we're heading into our jam session now. So Dr. Saint Patrick Reid, and I emphasize Saint for a reason. So thoughts, ideas, like what was going on as you were listening to him talk?
Yeah, no, listen, for transparency, Patrick and I have known each other for years at this point. We actually went to college
Thank you,
together.
Shadan, for bringing him over to us.
Oh, no, no, absolutely. And it's funny because every time we talk, I realize that the conversation can go on forever just because he's so, Ashish, you said it, like he's just so well informed, so, of course, highly educated and things like that, but so approachable and unique with the way that he delivers information. And so for me, even though I've known him for such a long time, I come away learning something with every conversation. And so hopefully our listeners just enjoyed that one because I learned a ton myself.
Sheesh, what about you?
Yeah. Um yeah, in terms of, I guess, the topics, I felt like Dr. Reed has so many ideas that he would like to try. Um, and the fact that he, I guess, taught a course just to learn about a topic, like, I don't know how many people would do that, right? Like, as he mentioned, some people are scared. I feel like that's the normal reaction
Mm,
to new technology, but I
mhm,
think he took it upon himself. So to learn AI, and the fact that he sees these possibilities, and the fact that he's so driven in terms of what needs to happen and where things are lacking.
mhm,
So I mean, I would be interested to see where he takes his research, because it does seem like he has so many ideas kind of in the back of his head, which of course we can't cover them all in 1 hour. uh, yeah, and I kind of felt like he got some ideas from the discussion as well. So we'd like to, would be great to have him back, to be
yeah,
honest.
Yeah, how
yeah.
about you, Selena? What do you think?
I mean, I think that one piece of data. I was talking to somebody earlier today, completely different field, and we were just chatting about AI. And he is in the banking space, and he said, they were using machine learning like over a decade ago. St. Patrick Reid, Dr. Reid also said the same thing, right? That machine learning has been part of their research for a very long time now, right? And now, with what the sort of the growth and what AI can do or not do, there's like a next level of application potentially that he obviously is exploring and really curious about, which is great. But it doesn't. Again, I think when you have these conversations with folks that have been using aspects of what we now call AI, as a sort of a catch-all, it doesn't remind you, right, that that sort of the integration of technology into all kinds of fields, including AI, aspects of AI, has been an ongoing. It's been ongoing. Didn't just happen with ChatGPT, right? Generative AI is one version of it. So I appreciated him kind of highlighting that, and then I also appreciated that he really recognizes the potential of this collaboration between AI and him as a scientist,
Mhm.
and that he could be afraid of what that means about his job or whatever, but instead he's inviting it in as an opportunity to see the problems in ways that maybe he hasn't seen before, to find solutions in the ways that he hasn't before, and that's what we really need. I think we need people who have that kind of perspective. But we also know, the three of us also know, because we've chatted with him. You obviously should have known him the most well because you all are friends, but that he has a deep ethical sense too about how he does his work as a scientist. And I think that combination of like a deep scientist who's like a renowned expert, world renowned expert, with the technology piece and then the ethics, right, to ground it all. Man, that's what you call a triple threat in the in the theater world or in the arts world, you know. So yeah, I think we need more people like him who's willing to bring those pieces together.
Even I'd say even one step more. I think because those three components are there, but a lot of times when you are engaging with folks who are academics, um, a lot of times they feel most comfortable specifically in their area of expertise, and they'll
Sure.
go
Yes.
super deep within their own area of expertise. And
Yes.
it's to me it's been kind of rare to see folks who are more willing to not just be deep but then also go across and
Yes.
expand across, right, to the point where
Yes.
he didn't even want to talk about this discovery that he made on one of the world's most
Yeah.
famous, right, viruses,
Yeah.
right. He's like, no, no,
Yeah.
no, that's whatever. And so that mindset to me is actually more
Mhm.
tech entrepreneur, right, than
100%.
traditional academic. And so
Yes,
it's this
I
interesting
agree.
combination of attributes.
Yeah, and I love that you said that because it reminded me also of something that he was talking about in terms of this collaboration, right? The multidisciplinary collaboration. And the fact that he has that spirit and he sees the necessity of that. I mean, in part because sometimes you can't look at a disease in isolation, of course. I mean, there's that aspect of it. But I think he really values that. He knows that the value is when you bring in multiple perspectives, when you bring in multiple expertise to get at a solution or to look at a problem differently. And I think, again, adding on to what you just said, right? The combination of all of these pieces really make him unique. I think it's exciting to see where he's going to go for sure.
Yeah, and he kind of, I guess, kind of discovered what we are seeing with the adoption of AI in general, right? Where the silos are kind of breaking down.
Yeah,
Like, you know,
slowly, but
based on our
yes.
first episode with John Radovan, I mean, he said that with AI and with better education, the information or the expertise certainly is not held by a particular group or a particular
Yeah,
person.
yeah.
Now you have this thing which you can just talk to, and you kind of have it explained to you in a way that you can understand it, right? Like,
Mhm, mhm.
it's not like you talk to somebody and they give you 50 jargons and then you're like, okay, what the hell did they say? Like, I don't understand anything.
Yeah.
But now you can have AI explain it to you such that you can kind of make sense of it, and
Mm,
you can go a little bit ahead than you could otherwise. And I think it helps everybody, and that's where the cross functional nature comes in, because now you're not waiting on people, right?
yeah,
You are more like, you can challenge people saying that, hey, I know that you're not telling me the right thing because I've checked this with AI, and this is what it is, right?
yeah. Except when it gives you the wrong answer, it tells you that something exists when it doesn't.
So interesting that you brought up. That is a feature for, or that is an issue with like a generic AI model, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But if you're thinking about a RAG or a,
Sure.
retrieval
Yeah,
based thing, then it would, then there
yeah,
should not be technically any hallucinations.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, and it's funny, and you mentioned machine learning. I mean, machine learning has been there, yes, but to use that to set up a machine learning pipeline, like, you needed a team.
Mhm,
Like, you would need like 50 engineers to set up
mm.
to gather the data, store it, secure it,
Sure.
have machine learning, host the machine learning model, train it, figure
Yeah,
out all the parameters. I mean, it was a nightmare. And what GPT or LLMs have done is, like, I
phenomenal.
think it has gotten away, like, we have gotten away with most of the work, and we can get started in a matter of minutes,
Yeah, it's
and for
incredible.
free, let me add.
Yeah, and I was listening to this, guy, ex-Google, on a podcast, and he was talking about how this idea of, like, AI really now getting to the point where it can regenerate, so we're not just talking about, like, bringing in information, we're really talking about now AI being able to sort of take itself to the next level. And seeing that kind of progress, it's both scary and terrifying. And then the opportunity space is also really, really interesting, right? Where that goes and where that leads to. But that's a different topic, and I don't know why I brought it up, but I just something that you said about like kind of what it takes to build, right, and where we're at now in terms of the build and where it's going to go. I think we're going to be seeing things that we couldn't have even imagined, really, which is both exciting and terrifying all at the same time.
I know what it is, Salima.
What?
It's the fact that we are coming to a close of season 2, and it's making you wax nostalgic a little bit because that
That
you
is
inside you
true.
knew.
That is true. Thank you, Shadan, for reminding me about that, because you're right. We are at the close of season 2. My goodness. We need to wait. Cheers. We need to cheers this up, folks, with water. But hey, why not? Okay, cheers
Bottle is empty, but yeah.
to the three of us. Well done, and thank you to all of our guests for season 1 and season 2. We couldn't have done this without you. I'm feeling less smart since I started this podcast, which is wonderful. It means it's working.
I know so much less.
I
I really
know
know so much less than I thought I did.
Exactly.
Episode 1. But no, super grateful to the guests and the listeners. Thank you for coming along on this journey with us. We appreciate you.
Plus. And there is a season 3. Is that right? Yes, there is.
Yeah.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. There's a season 3, and we're super excited about it and about seeing all the amazing people we talk to.
So yeah,
all right.
We'll see you all soon.
Yeah.
Like and subscribe.
Yes, that's right. Thank you. And we'll see you all soon. Take care.
Take care.